I want to talk about ego and the difference between an ego and an overinflated ego because I feel like some people confuse the two. And ego is not a bad thing at all. It is not. And you will, or maybe you have, saw people saying you need to kill the ego completely and nothing good comes from the ego and all this. And that is absolutely not the case because if you got rid of the ego completely, then what would be left of you? What would you be? I mean, the ego plays a very important part. Now, an overinflated ego is a problem because if you have an overinflated ego, I'm sure you know people in your life that do have an overinflated ego. Even people that don't think their ego is inflated, most of the time do have an inflated ego. So, and you can pinpoint these people because they will argue over silly things. They think they have to be right all the time. They will uh, get rude and start name calling. They will get angry easily. They will, and a lot of it's not just due to overinflated ego. I mean, the most people I know who have an overinflated ego also have things that go along with that. Whether it be narcissistic traits, whether it be trauma that they need to be that is not resolved, whether it be some form of mental health issue, not a major one, but some minor form of it. And it's I hate to say this, and I hate to sound like being judgmental or rude because I'm really not. I'm just pointing out what I see here. It is kind of like this is the way that I explain like consciousness and how it can evolve, and your consciousness can evolve. Is it is like people like that are stuck in that. It's kind of like they are teenagers. They have not fully grown into adults, even though they are an adult. I'm just saying their mental capacity, their ability to use rational thinking to and again, I'm not for rational and logical thinking all the time because at a certain point all rational and logical thinking breaks down and there is no way to explain anything other than to experience it. But I mean, within a normal daily conversation they cannot use it. uh, and that's where it comes down to. Again, if you think it's the truth, it's the truth. So but it is that's what I explained to. It's kind of like in another analogy here. Let's just say, when you're a baby, you have to learn to crawl, then you got to learn to roll over, then you have to learn to crawl, then you have to learn to walk. It's kind of like these people are still learning to transitioning from crawling to walking. And again, there's nothing bad with it or wrong with it or anything of that nature. It's just you can tell a difference in individuals, just the way their mindset is. So, but an overinflated ego is an issue because overinflated ego, a lot of bad has came from it, and that's another topic I would like to discuss. Good or bad? A lot of people say there's no difference in good. There's nothing good. There's nothing bad. It's just your perception and the way you construct things, and I don't agree with that at all. I do think there are bad and good, but the difference in ego and overinflated ego is so vast that, and it's like if you're in a spirituality or religion, it's like they have tricked you into thinking ego is a bad thing, and that's not the case. So, and there's a difference in being egotistic and speaking truthfully too. So, for example, I have, if you say that you are God, which you are God, and again, our definition of God is not the same probably, um, that you think that's wrong because it's egotistical to say that, right? But it's not. There's a difference in egotistical and truth. So if you're saying the truth, how is that egotistical? And I've thought about this. Like I would like to eventually, like I said, become Christ-like and outdo Jesus. And you might think, well, that's definitely ego talking right there. Why would you want to outdo Jesus? But if it is coming from a place of good intentions, and at the heart of it is to do good in the world, and you have to have, and you're looking at it from the mindset of, I'm not putting anyone up on a pedestal, because if I'm even listening to what the man said, anything I can do, you can do. Why would it be egotistical to want to achieve that or do better than that? It's a weird trap, really. I feel like that religion and spirituality puts in place to make you think that it's egotistical or blasphemy to say these things, but it's just not the case. It's just not the case. So the the distinction between the two are, again, ego is you. You are the ego. Ego is insert whoever here, even though that person does not really exist. That is your identity. So why would you want to kill yourself completely? That's just nonsense to me. But overinflated ego is a problem. It should be killed. The overinflation of it should be killed. If you want to do that. If you don't, then if you're happy being the way you are, then continue to be the way you are. There is nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with it. A lot of the things I come on here and I say, there's nothing wrong with it. Like, if you want to be religious and think that uh, God or Allah or whoever, you want to think Mary was the true savior. You want to think Jesus was the true savior. You want to think that God, your name's Jehovah. You want to think, I mean, whatever you want to think, there's nothing wrong with it. It probably would benefit you to realize you have been conditioned and you're in a mental prison that was programmed and you had no real say so in. And we can link this back to, think about this. Depending on which state you were born in, depending on which country you were born in, depending on which family you grew up in, that, and I guess the friends you hung out with, and whatever phase society was in at the time, it molds you and shapes you. So just realize you're not doing anything uh, spectacular. You have not discovered anything or achieved anything that is nothing more than status quo, what everyone else believes. And if you want to continue to do that, again, there's nothing wrong with it. Absolutely nothing wrong with it. If that's what you want to do and you feel strongly about it and you truly believe that, then stick with it. And if you really think that getting crystals and doing some yoga and meditation, which there's nothing wrong with yoga and meditation, there's nothing wrong with crystals, but if you really think that that's the answer and you think that you want to believe all this watered down bullshit spirituality and you don't think there's anything wrong with it, and you think you're a star seed and you're out to get reptilians and destroy the cabal, and there's a moon, there's a base on the moon that's preventing frequencies to get into Earth, then hey, more power to you. Nothing wrong with it. I've noticed people repeat a lot of things. They mimic things, they parrot things, they go along with things. They have no idea about what they're talking about, and it's obvious and apparent because you ask them what that means. And it's not that you're doing it in a rude or negative or mean, malicious way. It's because you just want to get an understanding of what they mean by that, because maybe they're understanding something completely different than everything else you've heard. But then whenever they get defensive and will either ignore you, get defensive, or try to start an argument, being hostile, then it becomes more and more apparent. So I can give you several examples of this. People that just get into Zen, Buddhism. There's this show called The Midnight Gospel that's turned into some weird cult-like thing in itself. They get into it. They don't know too much about it. They try to absorb as much information that comes to them. They have no direct experience or understanding of it, have not thought it through, so they just turn around and parrot it. And they do not know what they're talking about. It is really the thing. So 99% of people just do not think for themselves. They don't. And 99% of people that this is 10 minutes already. This is probably going to be a long one, maybe. 99% of people who claim to be spiritual are not spiritual. And I can tell you why. Because when you truly have some sort of experience, it will result into something called the dark night of the soul. That's something you can absolutely verify for yourself to be true. You can prove it just is what it is. So when you go through this, it took me about a year, a little over a year to get completely over it. And it comes and goes in waves. Like you go ups, downs, ups, downs. And at this point, you don't know what's real. Your mind has basically become so fragile. It's basically a reset, is what I believe it truly is. It's like you have to let go of all the shit you have been told and learned about this place so you can get a better understanding of what it really is. So you go through a lot of anxiety, you go through a lot of depression, and I mean serious, serious anxiety and depression. Uh, I describe it to you like this. It's kind of like when you wake up from, let's just say that you wake up and then, this is the only way I know how to explain it. It's like you have taken a fuck ton of shit the night before. You're hungover kind of the next morning and you're awake, but you're not really awake. You're like groggy and in a haze and it's kind of like you're half asleep. And this goes on, the process goes on for, however long. I guess it could be different for different people. I just know me, it was a little over a year. And it is like you are lost. You feel all alone. You do not know what's real. You don't know what's real. You don't know what this is. You don't know what's going on. You don't know where you're at. You don't know you don't know who you are. And now some people may hear this and say, well, that doesn't sound like anything but a psychotic break. And I could see why you would think that, but it is not. And that is the trap some people fall into. So going back to this real quick. So I'm going to go into a whole different thing on the Dark Knight, but this is something that will explain to you why most people that think that they're spiritual are not, because they have not followed the Dark Knight journey to its full conclusion. Because most people think they're going crazy, and which I thought I was going crazy. I'm not even gonna lie. Thought they were going crazy. Go out and seek attention, help, medical help from it. Turn to religion in some sense because they think that there has to be something higher than me out there, and I'm just so lost right now. I need Jesus, or I need, I need whatever. And so they turn to religion. Seen it multiple times. Both scenarios, not in real life, but in just people always observing online. And the third thing, which is the worst case scenario, is they commit suicide. So it's a pretty long, dark journey. You have to resolve a bunch of trauma you had in the past. You have to lose your human mind. You have to try to distinguish what's real from what's imaginary. You have to you just have to let a lot of shit go, and you have to rebuild your perspective on this place. And it is you got to do shadow work. You have to kill the fucking overinflated ego, and that thing is a monster within itself that does not want to go, will not go peacefully, will kick and scream and kick on the way out, and tries to make you miserable. Past events will come up, the way you've acted, behaved, conducted yourself, the fuck ups you've done, and it will make you focus on the negative more than the positive. Even though there could be one negative for every 10 positives, you will focus on the negative more. Then you eventually have to love yourself, and that's hard to do. So most people quit. Or, like I said, they go with religion, or they go with this watered down spirituality. And the watered down spirituality is toxic. I hate using the word toxic, but it is toxic because it teaches people to just accept themselves for who they are. And that's fine. If you want to accept yourself for who you are, hey, great, you should. But what you should also accept is you could do better. And I don't mean like this ego thing, like you need to do better, you have to do better. I mean a better person at heart. There's things about yourself you could change and you should change if you were serious, but this spirituality now just teaches you just love yourself the way you are. You're fine the way you are. There's nothing wrong with you. Just be exactly like you are. You know, if you don't feel good, just sit around and fuck off all day. You don't, if you want to go do some drugs, go do some drugs. If you want to, whatever. And it's just like, what are you teaching people? And I think it's odd people want to tell people to be vegan or not to be vegan. That's kind of a turn off for me. But anyway, I'm rambling. So, um, yeah, it's a game of form and play of life. I'm me talking to you. So, love you guys.